All right, ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't think of a better way than to start Labor Day weekend here in America and then the biggest weekend, I think, in the UK wrestling's history in a very, 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 very long time here. With, I guess you might want to say, is it a masked Wildfire Nate Reese? Well, we'll find out why here shortly, and we'll talk about all the latest happenings in the world of wrestling as well for sure. So, without further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, pro wrestling star here from the LWF. That's Wildfire Nate Reese. My friend, you're masked up. How are you?
Hello, Tom. I might need your help. I know Spanish is a very popular spoken language over in your country, so I was thinking it may be a little bit of El Fuego Loco, but I could be mispronounced, miscorrected. Please do correct me by all means if you need to. But yes, I am wearing a mask, only for now, just to go into our discussion a little bit later on with the announcement of what's coming up at the LWF's Honour and Glory on the 10th of September. And we will be discussing lots of things in regards to that. We will most certainly be discussing Clash at the Castle, All Out, Worlds Collide, a huge just array of shows going on this weekend, but in particular sort of Clash at the Castle and its heritage and why it is arguably the most important date in British wrestling in the past 30 years and what happens next moving forward from this. So there's a lot to discuss. Happy Labor Day to you and everybody over in the US. I've been working really hard, so we don't get that. But I'm happy to be here on Sportzwire.
I'll tell you what I have noticed that I'm really envious of, and I think I said this to Disciple because I saw Disciple had posted on his Facebook page. He was going on a holiday with his family. You guys get a holiday where you could pretty much just go off for, 7 days, 10 days, and you're allowed to do that. Whereas in the United States, pretty much they would have you work until you really don't have much of a pulse. So, I mean, that's the one difference I would say that I might want to certainly say that what you guys do is far better than what we don't do for sure in the United States.
Well, I hope everybody gets to rest easy and gets to watch some wrestling because there is a lot of great wrestling coming up.
Well, I definitely want to get to that because obviously we'll speak about the LWF in a little while for sure because there's a lot to talk about in the LWF and I'm always excited to speak about the LWF and I have a few announcements also for some guests that are coming on. One, you're going to definitely be very intrigued of. But let's talk about it because you did mention also about the fact that the WWE is finally back in the UK. And it's been a long time that they're in a spot like this. And we're going to see Castle at the Cup. And certainly it's going to be headlined by quite a main event there between Roman Reigns, our reigning defending champion, who, by the way, is on the 2-year anniversary now as champion, of course, of both brands. And Drew McIntyre, certainly Drew has had some problems of late with the bloodline, and certainly he's been the champion before, but not most recently. And there's some other great matches here, Gunther and Sheamus, and Edge and Rey Mysterio tag teaming together. I mean, that to me might be the match I'm most excited about. But give me your thoughts on what it means to you, though, for the WWE to finally come back, I think, to some would say, it's home, certainly in Europe, when it comes to the UK here for Castle at the Cup tomorrow night.
Okay, first off, I don't know how those
Wait, I thought you were going to be masked Wildfire Nate Reese from now on. Wait, I thought you were masked Wildfire Nate Reese.
I don't know how they can do that. I'll get to them later. But there's only one masked person in this universe that I have time for, and that is Rey Mysterio, to be fair. So that is a match that I'm very intrigued with Castle at the Cup.
And I'm excited because I just watched his documentary also, by the way, Rey Mysterio.
I need to try and find that. I'm not sure about the availability over here in the UK, but that is something I'm most keen to find. Anybody that's known me for a long time knows that I've always been very interested and fascinated by him. Yep. His style, everything that he does. But we've got to talk about the European style. We've got to talk about British wrestling. And ultimately, obviously, we've had this great influx of talent moving through NXT. I know that it's been remolded from NXT UK into NXT Europe. I hope that everybody who's sort of going through that transition finds what they're looking for and able to find the right direction for them. But this show ultimately, Clash at the Castle tomorrow in Cardiff in Wales, it's the biggest stadium show that WWE's had in this country in 30 years. Essentially, give or take, since SummerSlam 92. SummerSlam 92 is a very, very seminal event. I know that they've re-released it on DVD and Blu-ray over here.
Wow.
Because of the British Bulldog Bret the Hitman Hart matchup. I watched that just last week, just as a recap of going over and different things. So I wanted to see that again. And it really does have a lot of its strong heritage in British wrestling lies within those sorts of shows. And the atmosphere, anytime WWE has ever come to the UK, it's always been renowned for its atmosphere. I think they've realised sort of how many moments can be made here. Think about AJ Styles winning the WWE Championship from Jinder Mahal. Maybe a few years before, it wouldn't have even been thought of something that would take place, excuse me, on a show in London or in the UK or in Manchester. But it was there, and again, it was a huge reaction. Very, very popular win for AJ Styles to become WWE champion there again. So now looking at this show in Wales, huge stadium show, lots of different people. I've got acquaintances that are going to go to that show and look out in Cardiff. It's drawing a huge attraction over there to Wales. It's not quite usually like people would expect in London and things, so it's nice that other parts of the UK get to branch out and get to experience that too. It's not too far away from where we are in England, so people can travel there too. But we've got a hell of a card. Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. And as you mentioned before, Tom, coming up to 2 years, Roman Reigns, unified WWE champion.
I think it's a 2-year anniversary tonight. That's why I brought it up. I'm pretty sure
anniversary tonight. Wow, what an omen to go into for tomorrow. It's been an awful long time since we've had a champion hold the titles for that long. But during that duration of that time, Roman Reigns has cemented himself as a megastar. And made no mistake about it, he was a main eventer. He was a big star beforehand, but this has been the time. This has been his devices, what he wanted to do.
He's put now in the Mount Rushmores of the Hogans, the Brunos in terms of the title run. Pedro Morales, you want to throw out there. I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. We're in, as they would say, rarefied air.
Very much so. The way he carries himself, the matches, the way he talks on the microphone now, controlling the audience. It's a very different, confident person. Even from just changing, certain look, ring attire, his shoulders and his arms are most certainly bigger as well. He's put a lot of time into making that physical change manifest as well.
Sure.
And then you've got Drew McIntyre, who I am sure is going to have a beloved reaction tomorrow night as he comes out for the biggest match of his career. And again, this is somebody who has gone a longer route than maybe people expected. In some ways, there's a lot of intriguing parallels between Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns, almost being this sort of chosen or selected figure for the future of WWE. And there was maybe a few turns in the road and a few roadblocks.
Oh, I think Drew McIntyre had some really, really interesting forks in the road. Big time forks in the road.
But being part of this business, and when you think about so many of your favorite wrestlers and the journeys that they've had, and again, like we discussed with that Rey Mysterio documentary series, I know there was one on Kurt Angle. I know there's been one on DX. There'll be Stone Cold
Edge.
Steve Austin,
I think
sure.
Edge might have been my favorite one so far. Edge and Lex Luger, by the way. The Lex Luger one was like...
Yeah, like everybody's got different stories and numerous obstacles. Some may be more well-documented than others, like the legacy and journey of Eddie Guerrero, for example. Whereas again, there could be anybody else within sort of the industry, within the business, that have gone through so many different pitfalls and travels. DDP learned to train at my age 5, going on the journey to become a wrestler at 35. You've got Goldberg making the transition from football. Everybody has different journeys, but Drew, it's such a compelling case of somebody that lost the opportunity but didn't wallow in the despair that could have come with that, and has changed themselves and created themselves to become that person that they were already preordained and destined to be. So tomorrow night, He's won the WWE Championship before. He was the man that carried the company during the COVID period. People
I
can say
think
what they
that we're
want.
going to look back. Wildfire, that's a great point because I think I've said this here before. And I know we don't get a chance to talk WWE too much these days just because we speak with so many wrestlers on Sportswire Radio. But you think about that COVID era, to be a champion with no fans in there, as long as Drew McIntyre was, that's honestly, you're going to look at title runs. That's, I think, one of the more interesting title runs in history because, again, you had no fans, nobody could be in the arena, and you had to be a champion there, and you didn't have that adrenaline. You know it from being a wrestler. You didn't have any of that, and I think that run, going to really look back and maybe appreciate that run more than maybe we did in that particular moment.
Absolutely, and you're right. It's not often we get to talk about this, and you're the first person that said I'm not full of it. Actually, that's a pretty good thing, Tom. But with this, like you said there, with during the COVID period, he had a myriad of different contenders. I know Dolph Ziggler was one of those contenders.
Randy Orton was in the mix.
Randy Orton
for quite a while. Yep.
I want to say maybe Bobby Lashley as well at certain points.
Toward the end of it, Bray Wyatt definitely was
Bray Wyatt, absolutely. And so also, what often happens, particularly with your favorite, think of your favorite wrestlers. Edge is a great example, actually, of this. More often than not, the second or third championship reign tends to be the one that's the most decisive, the one that solidifies a wrestler within the main event sort of credentials within WWE. I think certainly John Cena, Randy Orton, they've had numerous title reigns, but that probably helped them. Batista's the same. You mentioned Edge there. Lots of different wrestlers sort of become more confident and they know what's expected of them as champion second time round. Drew McIntyre did a very, very good job first time round with no fans, unsure of what the direction may be, unsure of what would happen next, because there was no certainty of what could happen. WWE could have been cancelled. There could have been no TV. There could have been no shows. There could have been no wrestling. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, but it could have gone. There could have been no tomorrow. There could have been no live events happening for much longer. I know we're sort of 2 years in now, but again, this time last year, stadium shows weren't really on the sort of...
Yeah, SummerSlam I think SummerSlam was the first one last year. I mean, AEW kind of had something, but SummerSlam was the first one where it was like, all right, you know what? We're getting there. But all throughout 2020 and into early 2021, which was obviously Drew's run, you had nothing. You had all those, fans that were on the little trons where people would sign up and they would get an invite. They would be on these, I think they were on them for like an hour or so or 30 minutes. They would rotate them and it's the nightmare. It was just to watch. It was painful. I have to be honest. It was painful. I mean, it was better than nothing to watch because there would have been nothing going on. But that run to be a champion, and I think to finally get a crack at it here. I mean, Drew's kind of had, even since he lost the title, he's had kind of a fork in the road here. But let me get to a couple of different comments here before we get back into all about it. We have Uncle Ralph, of course. Love Uncle Ralph from CCW in the top tier and the working class militia. And I know that I owe some of the guys in CCW definitely a visit back to Sportswire Radio. But it's been a very busy past couple weeks, and I promise to get everybody back on for sure from CCW. And thank you, Uncle Ralph, for all of your support. And also, this individual says here, what's Donald Duck doing on the show? And he gives a, I guess, maybe nod to somebody that you might know that we might be speaking about here in a little while, going, way! And I think I know how that person he would be relaying a message off to would say that, but I maybe will save that comment in a little while for. But he does, which I have seen, because I had posted a couple of clips of you this week, by the way, and the one this afternoon kind of had you and, of course, Mr. Cross, a Donald Duck reference as well. So, I mean, you'd like to respond to that?
Couldn't even get 15 minutes of my life without a comment being brought up like that. And you say that there's way on there. I say nay, and we are most certainly going to cover anything that comes up with masks later. Comparisons to certain cartoon institutions within the pop culture lexicon. and the Los Lancadors. We'll cover all that. We were having a really nice gentlemanly discussion there, Tom.
That's what you know what? That's what happens here. You know, when you go live, anything's possible. As Vince McMahon used to famously say, anything can happen here. So in about 15 or 20 minutes or so, for sure, we'll definitely get into that because I'm chomping at the bit to speak some LWF actually, and we'll have an announcement relating a individual that you might be across the apron for coming back to Sportswire Radio after a couple of different yays and nays that I think we finally got it hammered in that he's coming back. So I'm looking forward to the announcement. Maybe you might not be so much and miss the cross, but we'll get to that. But I mean, Castle at the Cup, Roman and Drew, what do you think happens there?
It's very intriguing, isn't it? As usually at this point, sometimes you can feel the momentum going and you can feel a certain exchange of the championship, if you will, or somebody's going to win the title. Drew McIntyre, biggest win of his career, in as close to a show in the UK, in as close with home country as it could possibly get after 30 years, potentially establishing a whole new opportunity for UK to host shows like this. I think WWE would be beyond foolish if they didn't acknowledge how popular the reception's been to Clash at the Castle and to host events like SummerSlam or Hell in a Cell, for example, over in the UK. I think they would do
Survivor Series even, just something, because the UK fans, listen, let me tell you something. I'm going to say as an American, the UK wrestling fans, to me, are, if not the best wrestling fans in the world. I don't care if I'm going to offend anybody here in America for saying this. I don't care if people want to renounce my citizenship for it. But I really believe that the UK fans and the UK wrestling scene does not get the justice that it deserves. Whether it's the independent scene, whether it's what we've seen here from wrestlers like Pete Dunne or so many wrestlers that have come on, not just William Regal, not just the British Bulldog, because everyone's going to know them at the top of the list, but you've seen NXT UK, you've seen all these different wrestlers that have come out and involved. Look at Synergy. We've seen them on the WWE Network, Reese and Rogan. I mean, to me, UK wrestlers in the scene does not get the justice it deserves. And the WWE would be fools if they didn't make their brand more global and do more stuff in the UK. That's just my opinion.
I think the opportunities will come up. You've mentioned that the fans are great in the UK, but those wretches in Chile, you don't need to include them.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them. We'll get to the
No. But then you've got Roman Reigns. 2 years. Milestone run. Biggest run in, I'd say, the modern era, but that can be established for however long you want to consider it, really.
Yeah. I think since Hogan's run, 4-year run, this is the longest run we've seen a champion. I think Diesel was a year, Cena was a year, JBL was a year, I want to say. Maybe The Miz was champion for a year, I want to say as well, give or take. And not like to this level, we've seen 2 years since, I think, Hogan.
This is it, just pushing it towards the stratosphere. And a little part of me's torn. I think if we were having a small friendly wager, Tom, I'm going to go with Roman Reigns, with the exception that we may see 1 or 2 surprises appear at the end of Clash at the Castle to maybe determine the next challenger for his title.
All right, fair enough. I mean, certainly I'm going to go on the limb and say the hometown hero, Drew McIntyre, finds a way to get something. Because I'll be honest, I want to see a title change.
It'll be very cool. It'll be very. The reaction will be.
I think it'd be a great moment, and it also, because I've had this stuck in my brain for about 20 years or so, it would kind of offset a little bit what happened. I believe it was one night only, 1997. It was for the European title, the British Bulldog and Shawn Michaels, and I think the story famously was that the British Bulldog had dedicated the match, I believe, to his sister who was dying of cancer, and of course, naturally. Shawn Michaels wins in kind of like the foreshadowing of the screw job. I know everybody talks about the screw job, but kind of the foreshadowing of the screw job actually happened that night, which is almost 25 years ago to the day, because it was late September 1997. So I'd like to see Roman Reigns' title run be ended, at least for now, but we'll figure that out for sure. And of course, if you like what you hear from Wildfire Nate Reese, Nate_Reese_wrestling on Instagram, also Nate Reese Wrestling on Facebook as well. If you are watching, definitely give him a following. What do you think happens then in Edge and Rey Mysterio team up together? Because this, to me, if you would have told me like 5 years ago, when both guys weren't even in the WWE, and in Edge's case, long retired, I would have said, pass the bong. But I mean, what do you think about Edge and Rey Mysterio tag teaming together here?
I think is essentially a 15-year-old to 16-year-old young whippersnapper dreaming about becoming a wrestler who made the choice to do so at 17 or 18 to begin his training. Edge and Rey Mysterio were absolutely on my mainstays every single Saturday when they showed SmackDown over here in the UK. It's not even a secret. Rey Mysterio is one of my top 5 of all time ever.
Well, we talked about it. A lot of guys I've spoken with have said he's one of their favorites for sure.
And apart from the truly well-established cohesive team of Crossfire, that will be defeating the Los Lancadors on the 10th of September. Edge and Rey Mysterio had lots of excellent tag team chemistry. There was the excellent match at, I believe it was No Mercy 2002, where it was against him and, Kurt Angle and partner against them two. And it was arguably probably the best match of the year and a very stacked year of excellent matches. They had the triple threat tag team match later on with Los Guerreros. They had regular matches as part of the SmackDown 6 SmackDown period, in which just excellent work all the time. So I think we're certainly going to get some revisited moments from them as a team. I think it's a really great way for fans to engage as well, who are old and new, because Rey Mysterio is somewhat timeless, and Edge has had a really great opportunity to reinvent himself again and have this career resurgence. He had a very, very strong match in his hometown of Toronto not too long ago on Raw, which was a very popular win against Damian Priest.
Mm-hmm.
I saw he even brought out a Canadian destroyer there.
Yes.
That's not even colloquial.
Yes, I saw a couple of wrestlers attempt to use that in the last week. I was like, wow, that's kind of come back here all of a sudden.
I think it's one of those things that is always on the periphery of sort of people wanting to showcase their talents and showcase that they're... So again, Edge, a revitalized career, having a whole new string on his career. We'll talk about his tag team partner, Christian, as well, if you like, because he's somebody I'd like to discuss a little later on.
I'm going to spend a few minutes on All Out with AEW for
excellent.
Sure. I'll spend a few minutes on that for sure.
But no, I can't wait to see them team up. And alongside Gunter and Sheamus, which I think will have a wonderful, raucous atmosphere within Cardiff as well. There'll be a lot of chants.
Well, that's kind of like the hometown match almost. That's like the hometown match almost. I kind of thought that was the line I wanted to use with you.
It's going to be one of those, and I think Gunter's going to have a very, very rough evening, but it's going to be an incredibly strong match. I think very, very physical. And again, what great contrast between that, the tag team match with Rey Mysterio and Edge. Moving on again with the rest of the card and all sorts of different matches going on.
Threat, women's match. I think we got Shayna, Liv Morgan a part of that. Obviously, Liv Morgan is the champion there as well. That's going to be an intriguing match. I mean, there's no question that there's some really, really exciting matches here. And certainly when you made me think about Sheamus there for a second, he was the other guy that was a part of Drew McIntyre's run as champion, because he and him had a big feud that we spoke about quite a bit here on the show in the past, and talking about really, I think Sheamus is kind of also another guy that's had a great run these last couple of years, and a guy that I think is like 45 years old almost. I mean, who would have thought that Sheamus would be that 45, look the way he looks, and on top of that, the run that he's had. I mean, and he's been one of these guys almost kind of like a Dolph Ziggler in a sense. I think Sheamus has had maybe just a little bit more success, but kind of like a Dolph Ziggler, and you really think about it, you take a step back and say, wow, those guys have really been in the WWE as long as they've been in it, whether it's 13, 14, 15 years. I think Dolph's about 15 and Sheamus is about 13. And you look at it and like all time in like the company's history, like when you talk about matches, wins, championships, they're kind of like under the radar, but they're right there.
Kofi Kingston as well.
Yep.
Just being these constants. Sheamus has been this excellent constant. And when he established himself and really cemented who he was in, I'd say around 2011, 2012 when he became world champion.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I know he's had some time off at certain points. I think maybe due to injuries and things of that nature, which again is all part of the wrestling business. And he had an excellent tag team with Cesaro. Now Claudio Castagnoli again. So he's had a very, very good cemented run. And I think, again, people will actually maybe not appreciate him as one of those more agile, more capable, bigger wrestlers of this era until maybe once the sun sets on his career a little bit more. But he's doing really good, very, very physical. He knows what his style is. It's a style that isn't used an awful lot in WWE anymore, although Gunther is one of a kind.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Got himself in excellent shape as well, alongside just being as strong and as dominant, very physically imposing. So that's going to be a really, really interesting matchup. And if you saw sort of how the British fans responded to the Anthony Joshua boxing match and the response afterwards, I think it's going to be incomparable compared to the reactions that are going to happen at Clash at the Castle.
I cannot wait for it. And of course, we'll also see Bianca, Alexa Bliss, and Asuka versus Bayley, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky. So that's the new team at Stable that's kind of formed here over the past several weeks. So I'm looking forward to that match as well. Matt Riddle returns against Seth freaking Rollins. So that's going to be interesting because Riddle we haven't seen in quite a while. So we'll get to see that as well. So a lot of great things ahead here, certainly, as we are speaking with pro wrestling star here, Wildfire Nate Reese. And I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. If you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, do give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And I want to thank the group over at Wrestling Championship Entertainment because they have been supporting us. In fact, on their last show, which is Blaze of Glory Day 1, they actually put a nice advert for us. They promoted us. They promoted the website. They promoted the Facebook page. And I want to thank the crew over there at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. And if you want to see more of that as well, you can subscribe to their YouTube page at Wrestling Championship Entertainment and go to WCEHeat.com for more information because next week is Blaze of Glory Day 2, and we're going to continue coverage of Wrestling Championship Entertainment tomorrow night with several pro wrestling stars, including the likes of JDT, who just had a wild strap match with the Kodak Kid, and Craven Rage looks like he'll be in the house, and our reigning defending interstate openweight champion James Marshall. I know Nicholas Crenton's going to be in the house later this week, so we are back with WCE Heat coverage as well. So Wrestling Championship Entertainment's Heatful Summer continues. Again, Wrestling Championship Entertainment, like their page on Facebook, like their page on YouTube, WCEHeat.com. We're going to aim for 10:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night. That's the time that I'd like to do it, and I'm sure that the group will be more than happy to do that as well, and I look forward to speaking with them as well. But we are here right now with pro wrestling star from the LWF, which you can follow at Wildfire Nate Reese. You can follow the LWF at LWF on Twitter. Also, you can go to the LWF Wrestling on Instagram. Also, please make sure you subscribe to the LWF Television on YouTube for their page for LWF content like Monday Night Mutiny, more stuff related to Wildfire Nate Reese, and also subscribe to their Facebook page as we speak right now. I will get to the LWF in about 5 or 10 minutes or so, and we'll round out the rest of the show speaking about your match and some other notes that I want to really get into and give that announcement here that we'll certainly talk about regarding you that you'll definitely find very interesting. But I did want to talk about AEW All Out because if you do think about this wrestling weekend here, I know that WrestleMania is in April, and that's always kind of like the Super Bowl season, some might say in America for wrestling, but I kind of feel actually now it's September because we're going to have AEW All Out Sunday, Saturday's Castle at the Cup. Then next weekend, we're going to have KOW's Road to Gold to crown a new champion. And then we're going to have the LWF Honor and Glory both on the same night. So Wildfire Nate Reese, I mean, AEW All Out, we've got some wild matches there. Jungle Boy and Christian, Bryan Danielson and Chris Jericho. I mean, this might be an even more stacked card than Castle at the Cup. And give me your thoughts on AEW for a few minutes.
So AEW All Out coming as well this weekend. As you mentioned there, a stacked card. I want to just talk about Christian Cage and Jungle Boy for a minute. So
Absolutely.
Again, one of my all-time top 5, coming back from a long-time array of injuries. Somebody greatly influenced a lot of the things that I like within the world of wrestling and sort of things that influenced the things that I wanted to do within wrestling. Coming back against Jungle Boy. Christian Cage, again, always reliable. Always underrated, always able to carry everything that he does with style, with panache, like a superstar. Again, he's just made himself so relevant very, very quickly. Right back in it like he never left. He's got a hell of an encounter coming up with Jungle Boy. That's one that's been building and building and building for a while.
Months.
And that's good. And I think that's something that, again, to have wrestling fans be rewarded for this build-up and this contest, I think it's going to live up more than live up to what sort of the build-up has been. As you mentioned there, Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho, which, again, is a very, very intriguing matchup. It's one that I don't think they've really ever done before.
It's funny you said that. I was trying to think about it at this level. I'm trying to think in the WWE because they definitely crossed paths a couple different times, but they didn't have a feud to this magnitude. So yeah, I'm just trying to think about it. I mean, I'm sure somebody will fact check me and say you missed something, but
I know I do apologize sometimes. These fact checks, there's so much to think about, so much wrestling to take in, but I forget where I live sometimes. But with this match, it's going to be, again, a really epic encounter. I know Jericho's sort of been, again, on a little bit of a resurgence to have different matches.
He's like the ultimate chameleon. We've spoke about this. Yeah. He is the ultimate chameleon, this guy. Chris Jericho, I mean, in fact, he's doing what he's doing. He's about, I think, 52 at this point. I mean, what he's done at this point, I mean, I don't know if he's the greatest wrestler of all time, per se, in terms of wrestling ability or championships, but in terms of, like, maybe longevity, he might be the guy that just in different stages that he's had in his career that might be at the top. I mean, like I said, I don't know if he's the greatest wrestler of all time. He's probably not the greatest draw per se, but in terms of just reinventing himself to be relevant, I don't think there's any person that has done what Jericho has done because he's done this pretty much on and off now. We're talking 25 years. I know he's had a couple of times. He's taken breaks from wrestling, a few years here and there, but for what he's done at this level, I mean, second to none in my opinion.
Yeah, unmatched in the different ways that he can change himself. And one thing that's very, very interesting as well is you think about all the different incarnations of Chris Jericho. Because of the way he meticulously changes his look, his appearance, his hair, his facial hair, you can almost charter each one almost chronologically in your mind. From whether it was Lionheart Chris Jericho going back to 1992, whether it was the suited Nick Bockwinkel-esque Chris Jericho in 2007, 2008, having the list in 2014, to the Painmaker in New Japan.
Yep.
It's a very, very clever and conscious, conspicuous image that he always projects, and he always knows exactly what he wants to do. So in terms of showcasing his star power alongside Bryan Danielson, who has been on a tear in AEW, he's most certainly making the most of each opportunity the way that it comes. That's going to be a hell of a match. And we've not even spoken about the main event yet, Tom. Jon Moxley and CM Punk.
The controversial CM Punk. Because if you follow wrestling news or even listen to shows like Busted Open, all they do is talk about CM Punk, and you hear different things, but it still is certainly a match that is one for the ages here. I mean, you think about the card also. I mean, Kenny Omega's back. I mean, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks for the Trios Championship. You think about, obviously, the tag team titles and Swerve and My Glory were the champions versus the Acclaimed. You think about Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship, and Jade Cargill has always been one of my favorites to look at for sure. I'll just put it that way. And certainly, of course, Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. That's probably a match I'm really intrigued about. House of Black, who, by the way, I got to mention the House of Black because I was at the House of Glory show, which is here in the New York area. It's a company that's run by Amazing Red. I'm sure you remember Amazing Red.
I know. Oh, definitely.
Yep. So I knew you knew that. And House of Black, I got a chance to see them actually this past weekend. And they were across the apron from the aforementioned Amazing Red and also Jacob Fatu, who we know in MLW. I mean, what a run he's on. And also a guy who's had an interesting career, low key. We saw them kind of like not quite square off. Yeah, that was a really, really wild show there. And I got a chance to see that. And certainly I want to thank my friend, pro wrestling star Chris Urban from House of Glory for setting that up, and Anthony Finkel. So there's a lot really to like here. I mean, House of Black. In fact, I actually was standing right across from them, literally. There was like at the bar, they actually walked right past me. So, but unfortunately, my phone battery was at like 10%, and people would have been like, what are you doing there? But that's okay. But what do you think then when it comes to Moxley and Punk? I mean, such a controversial, I guess, situation there with an interim championship and Punk himself. I mean, what do you make of all that?
Ultimately, one of the best things about pro wrestling is its ability to surprise you. There's always the common phrase that anything can happen in WWE, but I think people may have felt that that's not something that's happened for quite a long time until maybe only recently again, due to a change of administration. But again, the way that wrestling has the power to move and surprise people and have that emotional investment is unparalleled. You don't get that in boxing. You don't get that in UFC.
No way.
I would say you don't get it in football over here, but I could feel Stephen Cross's eyes in the back of my head.
I don't know. I've seen different wrestlers that there are games, and I kind of do think you might be able to get that at a football game for sure. I think you might.
It's true, but people are ecstatic one way or another. And as you said, the wrestling world's been ablaze with comments, opinions, decisive very divisive and decisive notions of CM Punk, who he is, what he represents to wrestling. But ultimately, this match has been made infinitely more interesting now. You've got the potential foot injury going in. You had the resurgence with the promo in front of the Chicago crowd, who were absolutely rabid.
Oh, they love him. They love him.
Again, like we talked about some of these wrestlers that is easy to take for granted, like a Sheamus or a Drew McIntyre. It's very easy to push away what you've got. And people have been very quick very recently to push away CM Punk when just over a year ago, or just under a year ago, he was
the biggest story in all of wrestling. I mean, it was always when CM Punk coming back, when CM Punk, and he comes back, and it was, I mean, I thought the way they did it was really well done, and obviously people forget because that's been AEW's problem since the very beginning, because they bring in all these guys and guys from the beginning, whether it was a Kenny Omega or even a Chris Jericho to an extent, is they bring in so many guys that fan base wants to see. It almost becomes forgotten over time. John Moxley, another example, that was a guy who was brought in and kind of right before COVID there. And you think about just where he was, and even some guys they've brought in recently that, Samoa Joe kind of goes by the wayside a little bit, or anybody else that they bring in. Adam Cole, another example. So I think that's been their problem with AEW. They bring in so many wrestlers that it almost becomes like every other month they have to top that moment. And I think that becomes really tough to achieve each time.
They certainly do. But if you go back and look last year or throughout the majority of this wrestling year, if you will.
Right.
CM Punk, MJF. Was there a better feud in wrestling? A better series of matches? A better program?
I mean, you make a point. I mean, I did like Edge and Seth Rollins. I thought that was pretty well done. I mean, I would say that, I don't know if that was as long. So if you were telling me based on longevity, I might say CM Punk and MJF. Certainly, I mean, I would have said you and Bob Costin, but I mean, hey, I don't know if you would have said that.
Yeah, the resolution wasn't so great with.
That's why I wasn't going to bring up you and Costin. So I was going to go there, but hey.
Surely. Moving on. Looking at CM Punk and MJF, they had so many great moments that, again, was very different than the usual AEW television program.
Yep.
Things resonated. There was hints of the past brought up. There was all sorts of different storytelling and twists and turns, and led to a very, very excellent dog collar match, which, again, is something you don't really see in this era.
No.
And could be, again, a match that fans would maybe switch off to initially, but it was an excellent match. It was the right thing. Don't be too quick to sort of fall out of love with CM Punk. I think just objectively, I think he's brought a lot of AEW's main event moments.
Oh, for sure. I never buy the fact that they say, oh, well, his run in AEW hasn't been great. Well, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that. But I mean, look at the eyeballs that he brought to that company, and look at the attention. I think, listen, they've brought in a lot of big talent. I mean, Bryan Danielson certainly would just about be on that level. I mean, they brought in Christian, who I think, again, was another big signing. They brought in even other different names. Adam Cole, we spoke about. I mean, Samoa Joe to an extent. I mean, certainly Tony Storm. I mean, it's a long list of people they brought in, right? Ruby Soho, Sting even a while back. I mean, but I think certainly CM Punk was different because to me, that signing was kind of like on the level of when we were waiting for all those years for Bret Hart to finally make that appearance in the WWE after all those years. To me, CM Punk returning to wrestling was on that par, and maybe even better because Bret Hart, by the time we got him back to show up, was a broken man pretty much. I mean, he was 50 plus years old and went through what he went through, but I mean, CM Punk returning and being in a wrestling ring to me was on par with that.
And he can still go. There's still a lot of mileage left in this CM Punk experiment, if you will, within AEW. So many great matches left to have. He's always one of the main stars of the show, one of the main highlights of the show. You watch anything he's in, all eyes are on him in some form or another.
Oh, he's a national, listen, he's a mainstream figure. He's somebody, again, even if he didn't have success in UFC, he was in it. His wife is obviously very, very well known, and people love his wife and AJ Lee. I mean, obviously, you know, you think about everything that this guy brings to the table and just what he does, and he's a lightning rod. He's a social media darling. I mean, so at the end of the day, CM Punk, he gives you what they call earned media. He gives you earned media that an average wrestler won't give to you.
No, that's exactly it. And like you mentioned there with AEW, with so many names coming in, I mean, you couldn't even think about it sort of 5 years ago that you could have Mark Henry and Will Ospreay in the same wrestling company.
No way.
It's just unreal how many people have come and gone. And, you know, some guys have been mainstays. Think of like Darby Allin, for example, the Young Bucks, who were regularly featured and have quite a prominent spotlight. You've got people who maybe not get the chance as much. I'm sure there's plenty of people that kind of spring to mind there. Even Dustin Rhodes, to be fair. You don't always see Dustin on every show, who's, again, doing excellent work every time that he's
Hangman
on.
Page, obviously, have to mention him for the mainstays of, listen, for sure, AEW. I mean, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, who we kind of mentioned a few minutes ago in the car. I mean, listen, they have a stacked roster, and again, they're almost a victim of their own success in a sort of way because of the fact that they're constantly having to top all these different people they bring in. So they have a sort of a gluttony of the same issues, but I think for sure I'm really, really excited to see what happens there. I mean, so I'm going to go prediction real quick before I get to the LWF because I do want to spend at least a few minutes on the LWF and get to the guest I have to announce coming up here, which you're going to certainly be interested in. And no, it's not Nathan Gunn. Nathan Gunn, because I just had Nathan Gunn. So it's not Nathan Gunn. I can assure you it's not Nathan Gunn. But, I mean, what do you think happens there between Moxley and Punk?
In some ways, I think this one's harder than Drew and Roman.
I think it's much harder because I think you can see where Drew and Roman kind of go in a sense, but this one, I don't know.
So we've got a reignited champion in CM Punk coming back after an injury, just after he claimed the title. You've got a returning Jon Moxley who has been off for a few months with different reasons and is really starting to make strides again wrestling how he wants to, bringing himself into the main event picture again of AEW. And Moxley's one of those guys that there is always a very strong fan base. I think AEW, there are certain people within that might divide the fan base a little bit, but Moxley's one of those constant with the AEW fans. So, and they're almost sort of seeing that now with how maybe the fan base is dividing their opinions on CM Punk. So it's going to be really, really interesting decisions. You know what? I'm gonna roll the dice because I said Roman retained. I'm gonna go with CM Punk beating Moxley and becoming the champion again for AEW.
Wow, that's definitely dropping bombs there for sure. I mean, CM Punk winning it. I mean, look, I could certainly go both ways for whatever reason. I'm just going to be different here again, just to go Jon Moxley. Although I kind of see where you're going with it, but I'd kind of like to see. I always liked Moxley as champion in AEW for whatever reason. I thought he was a very good champion. They're also, again, kind of in a tough period, so I would definitely like to see Moxley get it and keep it and get another run for a little while. I mean, AEW's had such an interesting history when it comes to their champions, whether it's a Hangman Page, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho. Certainly, I guess CM Punk, you could say. I mean, they've had a number of different interesting champions, and I'd definitely be curious to see what happens there. And certainly Kenny Omega returning to the ring here again. I mean, Kenny Omega, another guy, you think about it, he was in a lot of ways, some would say, a better world champion than a Roman Reigns throughout that 2020, 2021 era, because he had, I lost count how many championships. I mean, I think if he could have got the Odyssey Championship, Ronaldo's Championship, he would have tried to get it. But at that point, I think you don't even have enough luggage to carry all those championships. So maybe it was better here. But I do have a question or a comment from somebody you did say something about last week on the show. And that is, of course, a world champion. And that is our LWF champion, our reigning defending champion, Davey Getzke, who, by the way, made an appearance unannounced with the Scenario Nathan Gunn, fresh off his victory at Bolton Town Wrestling against Bentley, who I guess is kind of a part of the LWF roster. We did see him at Monday Night Mutiny, and wrong comment there. That's Crackstaff for you. Mr. Getzke says, why does the title say Castle at the Cup?
Why does the title say Castle at the Cup? I think he means Clash. The Clash at the Castle, I believe he's making reference to.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he's just thinking about the many times that he held on to that cup and he had to wait for so long to get his championship victory within the LWF.
3 years he waited, by the way. Three long years.
That was it, and so that stayed in the cupboard gathering dust for a while over COVID. I can imagine he couldn't drink his Ribena out of that anymore. So, but credit where it's due, he did win the championship off Reynaldo. He's preparing for his match against Nathan Gunn.
He didn't seem too concerned about Nathan Gunn, though, last week on the show. He did not seem too concerned, despite the fact that the Scenario Nathan Gunn was continuing to reference the fact over 3 months ago, the last time Getzke and Gunn squared off at Monday Night Mutiny, Gunn came away with the victory, and Gunn also has a victory in his belt over, of course, Nick Cutter, the last LWF show we saw at Summer Smash. Oh, I think he meant that I put the wrong title on Facebook. Yeah, which I did, because you know why? When I did that, I was just trying to put it up there, and unfortunately, Facebook doesn't allow you to edit while I'm speaking. So yes, if that's the point, I did notice that. So thank you for reminding me, Mr. Getzke. Thank you for reminding me on that.
He's just being rude to you, Tom. He didn't realize that you're his biggest fan, and you appreciate the Castle Cup win, and you appreciate that, so you put it on there. Just as a reference to him.
Well, I did appreciate the fact he came on to Sportswire Radio. I don't know if I'm his biggest fan or not. I mean, certainly we all do know that I was with Reynaldo just hours before, unfortunately, he lost the big one. So I can't say that I'm Getzke's biggest fan. I would say that would be unfair.
But Reynaldo did lose the belt, so whatever you did, job well done. Job well done.
And I do have another comment directed at you now rather than me.
Oh.
And this individual says, where's Popeye? I don't think he likes you, Ducky. And, speaking of that, Popeye and Ducky, I did notice that there was an announcement a few days ago that we are going to see an Honor and Glory coming up here next Saturday, which again is my pay-per-view, my WrestleMania, my main event that I'm looking forward to. We are going to see the team of Crossfire, of course, the asset Stephen Cross, who still needs to get on this video here, with yourself against the Los Lancadores with Disfrazada in their corner. We will see the Masked Marauder, who's been putting video after video out there. Was he in Hogan's Beat Shop last I saw, or wherever else he is? And somebody who's finally coming back to Sportswire Radio. And that is the mysterious Mr. B. After numerous scheduling conflicts and different things between his management, he is coming back to Sportswire Radio. We're going to aim for either next Tuesday or next Wednesday, depending on what his schedule is like. So, Wildfire Nate Reese, you've heard it here. You're going to be in the ring. And also, what do you want to say to your opponents, especially the mysterious Mr. B, who's finally coming back to Sportswire Radio a few short days before the big match next Saturday?
Where do we start? Okay. So I came on with this before. Partially recognition of the lineage of luchadors and the lineage of lucha libre and the tradition of fantastic wrestlers such as Rey Mysterio, or well-traveled journeymen such as Ultimo Dragon, Jushin Liger, Psychosis, El Santos, Mil Mascaras. Then you've got Mr. B and the Mass Marauder. And if you look the entire time with everything that they're doing with this stream of propaganda that they've brought out against myself and Mr. Cross, what's it consisted of, Tom? What's it consisted of this whole time? Bizarre footage interspersed with these references to my greatest friend, Stephen Cross. You're asking where he is, Paul Sargent? He is wherever he needs to be. He is collecting his thoughts in preparation for Honour and Glory.
Or in the gym.
Or he'll most certainly be doing that too. But also this constant barrage of comparing it to Donald Duck. Donald Duck. Foul-mouthed.
We saw Disfrasana do that this morning on Facebook. He basically referenced you to Donald Duck. It was on Facebook right after we made, and the LWF did it also. The LWF management people who are in the LWF higher ups did the same thing. I mean, you are getting tag teamed right now, literally.
This is why I get migraines, Tom. But one thing that you recognize with this, and again, they want to create comparisons to somebody that wears blue and is hot-tempered and is short and doesn't listen and his mouth never stops running. I really can't understand where they've drawn those parallels from. But as you can see with this, what's the thing with Popeye and Donald Duck? They are mainstays within the pop culture lexicon. You've seen the Mass Marauder, and he's got those poor hostages that are on some holiday making reference to seeing me whenever they go around Disney World. They've been obsessed about me this whole time. They've not thought about the match or strategy. They're trying to create this image. But yet ultimately, they're making reference to two figures within pop culture that are recognizable everywhere across the world. Cornerstones within pop culture, just like myself and Stephen Cross are. We are cornerstones of the LWF, cornerstones of the British wrestling scene. You know, you could compare Mr. B and the Mass Marauder to, I don't know, Silverhawks, Mask, Street Sharks, Beast Machines, Diabolique, cartoons that came and went and nobody cared. Eek the Cat, SWAT Cats, whatever you want to say. People don't even remember them. And that's all that's going to happen on September the 10th. Because you can see this has been the constant thing. Even LWF management, they've just got to get that little jab in. They just can't help themselves. Things are going to change really, really badly. And you talk about Honour and Glory, that title coming to this match, and they can bring Desperado with them. It's fine at ringside. There's going to be no Honour. There's going to be no Glory. We're not going to have an athletic contest. Self and Stephen Cross have been under this barrage of continual abuse, mental torment, this humiliation every single chance that they get. But when it comes down to that match, when it comes down to looking across from there, they're going to be glad that they're wearing masks to hide the fear, to hide the shocked expression of what's going to happen. Every single moment has led up to this, where Crossfire has always been one step apart. They couldn't even put us in a team last month.
You guys have a couple of different spots, whether it's mixed tag matches, tag team matches. There's certainly been that moment of Crossfire within itself.
But they could never put us together because they were too afraid to do so. Now, Stephen Cross and Dan Evans had a pretty good showing with my emotional support, should we say, last time. But you put me and Cross together, we're going to be unstoppable. And yeah, they may be inseparable friends, amigos. I know Cross can't stand me, but he's still my best friend because I'm so valiant and can bear that cross. No pun intended there. That's my burden that I will carry as I go into this match. And they've got to remember that every single time we lock up, I'm not going to go and take the arm or a headlock. The elbow, when it grazes against the orbital bone, whether you're wearing a mask or not, can cause it to bleed. Whether you twist on the chin can change the way that oxygen can influx down there. Everything that they're doing now, I really, really hope they're ready come September the 10th. Because the last laugh will truly belong to myself, the asset Stephen Cross. And it won't just be everyone there, Mass Marauder, Mr. B, Doritos, looking out in shock. It's going to be everybody in Chorley gobsmacked. They're not even going to be able to bury me with the barrage of insults that they usually do. Because, by the way, I'm made of Teflon. It just bounces off. But they're going to be astonished in silence, pure silence. Myself and Stephen Cross prove everything that we've known for so long. Everything that LWF management has tried to amusingly place to one side. And that when put together, Crossfire, whether we like each other, well, I can like him, whether somebody likes each other or not, we're going to be an uncomparable team. And we're going to go from being a footnote to being unmentionable to being notorious and unforgettable.
Well, I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me as if the Los Lancadores might be caught in the crossfire. We're going to find that out next weekend at the Buckshaw Village Community Center, and we are going to get on the mysterious Mr. B, who I am sure is going to have a lot to say about what Wildfire Nate Reese had to say, and certainly I'm sure much else on his mind we'll get firsthand knowledge of on Sportswire Radio, and certainly his continued poking fun at Wildfire Nate Reese. And also, the asset Stephen Cross, who, by the way, the asset Stephen Cross, and they really didn't. They've gone really above and beyond the means of antagonizing Mr. Cross. And we know Mr. Cross, one thing about Mr. Cross, he certainly is somebody you don't want to get on his wrong side. That's all I'll say. You don't want to get on his wrong side.
Cross doesn't suffer fools gladly, which is why he appreciates all of the advice, expertise, and experience that I provide within a tag team environment. Bring them on. I'm sure they've got hand-drawn sketches. I'm sure they've got glove puppets.
I don't know if that's going to work for them, though, because I'll tell you one thing, though. I don't know if it's going to work because it's going to be different. When you guys get in the ring, because you guys are floor generals. You guys are ringleaders, and it becomes different. All the jokes, all the videos, all the emojis, all the images, they all come to the end. They all go by the wayside next Saturday because forget about Clash at the Castle, Castle at the Cup, All Out, whatever else you want to throw out there in between. Forget about all that because I'm worried about and thinking about most is Honor and Glory, the tag team match. This is going to be the biggest match of the year. Forget about any other match. Wildfire Nate Reese and the asset Stephen Cross against, with Disfrasada in their corner, the mysterious Mr. B and the Masked Marauder. And Paul Sargent again has another comment for you. He says here, wildfire more like wildflower.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's this train. This is what the LWF does.
Are they recruiting stand-up comics also in the LWF? Are they recruiting stand-up comics as well?
Well, there was a television show that's due to reappear called Britain's Got Talent, but unfortunately, there's like a glass dome that exercises the people from Chorley from ever attempting to audition for that show.
So you don't think then that the Los Lancadores would be in that then for that show? You don't think so then?
Well, I don't know. I mean, unless you can... Is there a talent for taking out trash? Is there a talent for garbage and refuse collection? Is there a talent for, I don't know, tumbling maybe? I'm not sure. But one thing's for sure. They can put away and they can do the sketches. They can come up with all these different wonderful things.
Well, Reynaldo did tell me that the fans seem to like the Los Lancadores. I have to give them one due for something. And the fact is, Reynaldo did say that the fans really seem to like the Los Lancadores. He told me that the fans they have really come into a liking for them. So, I mean, somebody seems to like them, and it seems to be a
Wow,
lot
what a
of people.
surprise. What a surprise. It's like the blind leading the blind, isn't it? Surely
Well,
loving
that's
them
what
over
Ray
there.
said. Listen, and we love Reynaldo. We love everything about Ray, but that's what he says. I guess we'll find out here once again as we get the return of the mysterious Mr. B. And before I get closing thoughts also from you, we're going to break it here also. We have a return next Thursday from somebody that you know very, very well. That is the natural-born fighter, R.P. Davis. And what a next week it is for him, because he is going to be wrestling in TNT against Shreddy, and that's going to be a lot on the line there, him and Shreddy for a championship. And then he's going to be in the ring next Saturday against Big Guns Joe and KOW, also on the line for a championship, because he's a part of the Road to Gold tournament in KOW to crown their next world champion. So RPD could be holding a lot of gold once again before next weekend's out. And I think we could see a lot from him in any time we get him on here. So I'm looking forward to the natural born fighter, RP Davis. That'll be next Thursday. Figure around 9 o'clock British Standard Time. We'll get the natural born fighter, RP Davis. He'll recap for us all the latest events with him. He's tag teaming, then he's wrestling against the Ronin Brian Aidenson. He's got this feud with Shreddy that everyone's talking about on social media. We've seen him in the ring, obviously, with so many other big names, and also Big Guns Joe to recap next weekend, Road to Gold tournament. So looking forward to that. But before I get to closing thoughts, anything else you want to say to the mysterious Mr. B, especially before he comes back by the time we speak next week?
I think probably the biggest thing is that looking into this match, this isn't a championship match. It's not for the tag team titles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's for number one contendership or status within the LWF, but I'm thinking maybe I need another trophy to go along with my collection of masks here. And maybe what better way than taking Mr. B's Mask Marauders masks, and we'll see what they look like underneath. And we'll see who gets to laugh then.
I think we might have a clue about what's to come, and I'm sure that the mysterious Mr. B will want to find out and talk about it with what Wildfire and Nate Reese had to say. And it's going to be a big, big card ahead here at Honor and Glory. Of course, Davey Getsky in the scenario, Nathan Gunn, who's kind of like our unofficial third man here on our LWF Power Hour here Fridays on Sportswire Radio. So Eitan Steen and your old nemesis, Bob Costin. I mean, there's a lot of big matches here. We've got the Wrecking Crew and the Models. I mean, that's a really, really intriguing match there. The Wrecking Crew and the Models. I mean, that's almost like what you'd call a legitimate coin toss here. You've got the Absolute Worst and Shining Wizard, and that's another really, really intriguing match. Then Lana Austin and Jenny B here. I mean, that could arguably be also a main event. So you got a stack card, a lot to get into. We'll talk about that with you next Friday as well. Also, we'll get your reactions from the mysterious Mr. B as well. So a lot that we dived into. In fact, we went a little longer because we made sure that we cleared the deck for you. We didn't want any guests. We didn't want you for 20 minutes. We wanted an hour with Wildfire and Nate Reese. We wanted to clear the deck for you tonight. We're going to try our best each Friday to do that. It also helps my voice because I don't want to go 3 hours Friday afternoon New York time, then come back Friday night New York 3 hours time. So this gives me a little time to rest my throat, which is certainly something I desperately need these days. Kind of like those who get in the ring too much. But I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug, share, and I can't thank you enough. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Much, much appreciated as always. Great to be on the Sportswire, I guess, showcase. I don't know how to even describe it these days. It's great that we've been able to do this these days from the old audio format, as great as that was. So I can show just how disgusted I am with the Los Labradors. And I get to see them at Honor and Glory. If anybody wants to follow me, follow myself at Nate_Reese. That's RWSE_wrestling on Instagram. You can find me at Wildfire Nate Reese on Facebook. You can look up for the asset Stephen Cross and Sparky316 on Instagram. Message him with hashtag Crossfire is the best, hashtag Nate Reese is the man, hashtag Nate Reese has the plan, hashtag Nate Reese misses you. Whatever you need to hashtag, make sure that he gets these messages as much as you possibly can. In terms of final thoughts, it is the largest weekend for wrestling in quite some time. Hands down, one of the biggest ones for this country. Please make sure you're getting involved. Make sure you're engaging with it, whether it's finding out new wrestlers, whether it is checking out Clash at the Castle, whether it's looking at the NXT Worlds Collide event as well, which is maybe falling a little bit under the radar, but that's going on as well. There's a lot of surprises on last week's NXT show, so there'll be a lot of surprises, I think, continuing there. You've got a stacked card at All Out with AEW. You've got the LWF, KOW, RPD potentially becoming a double champion, which maybe I need to put a small wager on if they'll let me do that.
He better come through because, between him and Bentley, I feel like that they've had so many screwy things happen to them over the past several months when it comes to gold. And I'll actually address this with RPD on Thursday. But I really want to see him win one right now because, like I said, it's him and Bentley. Every time they get a championship, they get something thrown out their way to screw them. So I really hope that this is the moment.
I really hope he does too. I've known RPD for a long time.
I know.
I'm willing to bet an awful lot of money on him winning, so I think maybe I need to do that.
He's definitely my pick. Listen, in KOW, we had AOP on last week, and he's always at the top of my list. And certainly at TNT, I feel like that this could be the moment. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed here.
And for those of you who may not have seen RPD or anybody else like that, now's the time to get on the ground floor. Check out some new wrestlers. Check out your favorite wrestlers. Get to YouTube. Check out channels like the LWF. Check out promotions like Odyssey Pro Wrestling, KOW, anywhere in the area. Check out local shows in your area too, wherever you might be. You never know who can be there, what highlights are there. You saw the House of Black and Low Key and Amazing Red last week, Tom, yourself.
Low Key basically opened the show, the official show, Low Key of all people. And I think I said this on Instagram. I watched him as a kid 20 plus years ago on Shotgun Saturday Night. And then here I am actually watching by the bar. Actually, he's right in front of me. So, you just never know. Eddie Kingston obviously was the main event. And Eddie Kingston, I actually took a photo of Eddie Kingston. And he looked at me while I'm taking the photo. I think he didn't want me to take the photo.
You've got it. It's prosperity there. It's another memento of a great show. Yep. And again,
absolutely.
Get your moments. Go down and see the wrestlers. Support them.
Absolutely.
Just keep watching wrestling as much as you can. And I've mentioned this a few times before. If you're watching any of these big shows, make sure I always recommend having coffee. That's great. But get a drink, get some snacks if you want to. Put your phones down and watch.
Well, you might want to take a video or a photo. You do want to take a photo or a video. I do find myself trying to do that. And also, where I will say before I go, and I think I heard Gareth Angel say this somewhere. I think Gareth and I spoke. Maybe it was on his interview or maybe it was off the air, off the record. You got to have popcorn at these things. The event that I was at, they had these BS, pocket, Fritos corn chips. And they had this overstuffed pretzel that if I would have ate that, I would have had been on the number 2 toilet for the next 3 hours. And they served these hot dogs that didn't even look like the hot dogs Steve Bibby served. So to me, you got to have the right snack. So if you are a wrestling company, at least give me candy, give me a soda beverage, give me something good. And popcorn as well. Popcorn most especially. Got to give me the popcorn. So that's all I will say because that's always the funny joke.
I miss those snacks and I miss those beverages, but you've got to look pristine when you're going into competition with such diverse.
You're out there in the ring, so we certainly can not fault you for that. And of course, Nate_Reese_wrestling as well on Instagram. That's Nate_Reese_wrestling on Instagram. Nate Reese Wrestling on Facebook. And we are here with pro wrestling star here, Wildfire Nate Reese from the LWF, and I guess sometimes Odyssey Pro Wrestling. We recapped here Clash at the Castle, also of course All Out and LWF Honour and Glory, where Wildfire Nate Reese will be in the ring next weekend at the Buckshaw Village Community Center against the Los Lancadores with Disfrasada. We will be getting on the mysterious Mr. B next week to speak about what Wildfire Nate Reese had to say and much, much more. So looking forward to all that. Of course, the LWF Wrestling on Instagram, LWF on Twitter, and thank you to management for sharing our link on Twitter as well for that. So we will be back for sure tomorrow night, one more time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time with Wrestling Championship Entertainment Stars ahead of Blaze of Glory Day 2. That'll be JDT, Craven Rage, our reigning defending Wisconsin Grand Slam Universal Champion, also the Interstate Openweight Champion James Marshall, plus much, much more. So tune in for that. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Thank you. Have a good night. And we'll be back here tomorrow night and also next week with a full slate of shows, again, including the Mysterious Mr. B, RPD, and Wildfire Nate Reese. Same time, same bat channel, Friday night, 8 o'clock. Thank you.